Hey everybody, so today I'm going to be reviewing The Fellowship of the Ring by J.R.R. Tolkien. Let me just start off with kind of like my spoiler-free thoughts on the review. I'm going to keep this super short because this is a work that has been talked about thousands and thousands of times, so I don't feel the need to talk about this spoiler-free for very long. Let me just say that if you want to consider yourself well read in the fantasy genre, I think that this is a must read. No other piece of literature has affected the fantasy genre and arguably just storytelling in general more than The Lord of the Rings has. I mean, it is so influential. You see its influence everywhere, especially in the fantasy genre. So, I mean, that's all I got to say about that. Spoiler free. Like, pick it up. I highly recommend it. It is very well written. I mean, it's Tolkien. Like I said, there's not a lot to be said that hasn't already been said. Give it a shot. All right, and so that concludes the spoiler-free section. So now I'm going to be diving into specifics about the story. And so I really enjoyed this. My main reason for wanting to pick up this story is that Robert Jordan and George R. R. Martin are my two favorite authors, and both of them were heavily influenced by Tolkien. I mean, they are. I mean, they wear it on their sleeves. I mean, Robert Jordan literally set out to retell the story that Tolkien did in The Lord of the Rings, and George R. R. Martin arguably did the same. Maybe he wasn't forward about saying that that was his goal, but I mean, both of them were so heavily influenced. I thought that I have to read this work that influenced my favorite authors so much. And so I started with the Fellowship of the Ring. I actually started with The Hobbit. I enjoyed it, but this is me diving into the Lord of the Rings, and I really liked it. Let me get kind of the my bad thoughts on it out of the way. I thought that the song breaks a little much. There were a lot of song breaks, and that was the same in The Hobbit, but I feel like there were more in this story, so that was a lot. And then the other thing was and so let me just say I had also seen the movies. I'd seen all three movies before reading the story, so I did have a pretty good idea of what was going to happen. Um, but I actually think the movie like cut out all the right parts. I think that there is a long time spent in the Shire at the beginning. I didn't hate that. I actually really enjoyed the parts in the Shire just because, well, one, because it was different. It was a little more refreshing. I was like, oh, okay, I didn't really get this in the movie. I also liked that they kind of stretched out the time that like Frodo had the ring, and like just from when Bilbo leaves to like when the main events of the story happening. In the movie, it just felt like super condensed, and I get why they had to do that. But so I actually didn't hate that part. I actually did enjoy that we got more time in the Shire because I think the Shire is really cool. Um, what I wasn't the biggest fan of was Tom Bombadil. That part of the story dragged for quite a bit. Like that went on way longer than I thought it would. Like I had heard about Tom Bombadil, but like that, I wasn't expecting that. That went on for a really long time, and I had heard that basically that aspect of the Fellowship of the Ring was basically just remnants of the Hobbit being kind of meant for kids, and so this was that kind of seeping into it. Is what I've heard at least, but I yeah, it wasn't my favorite part. That was definitely my least favorite part was good old Tom. But other than that, I enjoyed the book more than the movie. Just because I feel like the movie, I mean, everybody loves the movie. I mean, it's like the example of adaptions of book to movie adaptions. Like, I mean, people use this as like the prime example. And I think that the movie, well, it did a good job. I obviously think that the book, you just got more out of it. You got more descriptions. I mean, you got Tolkien's beautiful prose. I mean, it was written so long ago, but I mean, it is just so cool to me how long Tolkien spent trying to craft this story, and you see it with the words. Like every single like sentence is poetic almost. Like he spent so much time focusing on the language that he was using and writing and rewriting and writing and rewriting. It paid off. I mean, it paid off. It paid dividends because it is so well written. I thoroughly enjoyed reading just like it's just about every sentence. I really really enjoyed just how well written it was. Um, it was obviously written differently than people write today, but I don't think that it's actually that difficult to understand. I expected it to be a lot harder to kind of get into just because I mean it was written so long ago, but it wasn't that bad actually. I mean once like I mean third of the way through, totally used to it. Totally used to the way that he writes. That was really cool. It's the same thing with The Hobbit. I mean, The Hobbit wasn't that hard either. This was, I would say, easier to digest than The Hobbit, which was really nice. I love. I mean, let's get into some of my favorite. I love Sam. I mean, I think that that's like not a genuine like a new opinion at all. Like people love Sam. I mean, Sam is the fan favorite by far of the whole story. I liked him in this story as well. Except he was less of like a friend. Like he was still a friend of Frodo, but it was more that like he worked for Frodo. Is what it felt like. I didn't realize that they definitely didn't really portray that in the movie as well. They just kind of made it look like they were friends. Um, and I liked that aspect of the movie better. I liked that they were just kind of friends. The fact that Sam kind of worked for Frodo. I mean, it's not that bad. It's just that it wasn't my favorite part, but I still really enjoyed the fact. I mean, Sam is just awesome. I think that he's going to really shine through even more in the next two books. I'm really excited to see where the story takes him. I also thought I enjoyed it more that the story was more Frodo centric. Like the part with like Gandalf telling what happened to him with Saruman. That was like done when Frodo met with Gandalf, other than in the movie where we actually see it happening. I preferred getting it through Frodo's eyes. I loved that most of the story was told through Frodo's eyes. I hope that that is the trend that we see through all three books. I can't imagine that happening just because I do know what happens in the next two movies, and I mean that I don't see how some of the story I just don't see how you could tell if it's just through Frodo's eyes. So I'm sure that it stretches beyond that. I also would so spoiler alert for the whole series, I guess. Just because I would say I was surprised that Boromir didn't die in this story, but I liked it better that he didn't because I feel like that's gonna be like a really cool way to open up the second book. I'm assuming he dies in the beginning of the second book. I don't know that for sure, but I thought that Gandalf's death, quote unquote, was super impactful. Like if I was reading that for the first time, I would be like, and like I didn't know what happened. I would be devastated about Gandalf, and so it didn't really need the death of Boromir. I thought that the loss of Gandalf that was great. That was so good, and I think that it'll be really good to have another major death in the Two Towers. I believe is the title of the second book, and so I really think that that will be really cool. And then I liked Aragorn's character. I thought that he was really good. I liked him a little bit more, I think, in the book than I did in the movie. I just enjoyed him more. I've heard that he's more when it comes to the crown, like he just kind of wants it in the story, and like we really didn't get that from him that much in the story, but like or not really at all to be fair. But I've heard that that's a difference between movie Aragorn and book Aragorn, and so I'm looking forward to that in the next two books. But overall, I mean, I enjoyed the reading experience so much more than the movie experience, just because I mean Tolkien crafted such a phenomenal world that it's just so cool to experience it and to experience like every little detail that you get. Like I felt so immersed in the world, like honestly that maybe like I'd never felt before. Honestly, I don't know if I've ever felt that immersed in the world. Like his Tolkien's world building is second to none, and I mean that's the reason that everybody, literally every fantasy author after him, has tried to replicate what Tolkien was able to do, just because he did it so well. Nobody arguably has crafted such a realized world as Tolkien did. And I mean that is a feat right there. And that's about all I have to say about this book. I really enjoyed it. It's not something I'll necessarily be picking up again, just because it doesn't really align with my tastes. I'm much more in line with like the modern fantasy, like where it's kind of become what with the works of Robert Jordan and George R.R. Martin. But like massive respect. Like even though this isn't like my favorite kind of story, this is the kind of story that Tolkien wanted to tell, perfectly done. Like this was perfect. This is a 10 out of 10 perfect execution. No one stopped him. Arguably, I would say nobody has topped him. Nobody has executed the story that they wanted to tell as well as Tolkien did. And that's like I love George R.R. Martin. I would need to see how George R.R. Martin finishes the series before I can say that he beats Tolkien. And honestly, even if George R. R. Martin finishes the series great, I mean, there are going to still be people that say that Tolkien did it better, just because he did it first. And I haven't gotten to the end of Wheel of Time yet, but it it'd be tough. It'd be tough to top what Tolkien did. Now, to be fair, haven't read books 2 and 3 of Lord of the Rings, but if it keeps up with this pace, I think that it will probably be, in my mind, I will always respect it as being laying the groundwork for all of my favorite fantasy stories. So like always gonna respect it for that. Super glad that I read it. I would highly recommend it if you haven't read it. And yeah, that's kind of my review. So if you disagreed with anything I said, please leave a comment down below. But if you enjoyed the video, make sure to like and subscribe and have a great day.